Paul, I feel frequently that there are pieces written about the baby boomer generation moving its way through society and the age brackets and the pending doom that it's going to represent, whether it's going to be from a shortage of workers or a massive need for long-term care or any number of different negativities associated with this generation moving its way because of just their size through the economy. This is the first one that I've read that's been like, no, this is actually a stabilizing factor right now, and it lays out an argument of, stuff that we probably see every day, which is this generation is spending a whole crap ton of money, and they have a lot of money to spend, and it seems to be helping out the economy in a number of different, perhaps unforeseen ways. But let's cover a few of these basics here. There were a record 11,200 Americans turning 65 every day in 2024. A decade ago, that was 10,000. So this is a marked increase in the number of people turning 65. What does that mean? You're eligible for Medicare. Mm-hmm. What else does it mean? You're getting pretty close to pulling Social Security. Right. And while the Social Security bucket is definitely something that this generation earned, it is a new series of incomes coming into the households. And so I can tell you firsthand, while it shouldn't, people think about their Social Security checks differently than they do when they spend their own savings. I would tell you as a financial person that you shouldn't think about it that way, but people definitely do. They get more comfortable spending. They certainly get more comfortable retiring once they are eligible for that Medicare. And we are seeing the benefits, I think, of all of that on the big pieces of our economy right now, with some, admittedly sizable drawbacks too.
Yeah, it's interesting. Some of these statistics quoted in here, Mike, you mentioned the amount of Americans turning 65 every day, but you also have had just a tremendous amount of new Social Security recipients. Back in 2015, 1.2 million were added of new people turning on their Social Security. Over the last 12 months, we've seen that increase to 1.8 million. Huge. And then if you just look at the other piece that's examined here is those who are collecting Social Security versus the amount of job growth that we're seeing as a country. And the argument that's being made in this piece is back in, let's say, 2004 to 2006, the U.S. added 6.6 million jobs during that span of time from 04 to 06. There was 1.3 million new Social Security beneficiaries, a ratio of about 5 to 1. If you look at that today, it's basically 1 to 1. Over the past year, we've added about 2 million jobs, and there's 1.8 million new Social Security beneficiaries. So as a result of that, in the piece here in Bloomberg, theorizing that perhaps because we've seen more people retiring and stepping away from their job, it is holding up this labor market a little bit more as you have a phasing out of older employees, more focus on employers retaining that younger generation, and you've seen perhaps less in the way of layoffs as a result of that.
Yeah, that is a interesting theory, right? I think there's been all this anticipation of, AI is going to just wipe out a portion of the workforce. The answer might be you don't need to if you've got this many baby boomers retiring proactively and voluntarily.
Yeah, it's a spot where we're so conditioned to seeing it every single day because we work with a lot of people who are retirees. So I read this and I say, oh, of course.
No surprise.
But we face it, head on every single day because we're dealing with folks in that age bracket. But it does seem like this doesn't negate the negative impact that I think it has on, we talked about new college grads really having a difficult time sort of finding new jobs to be added in the labor force. It seems like that has
the
been
labor
the case.
force is at the best of times difficult to summarize and describe as either good or bad. And, my temptation is to call this a good job market right now. But you're right. If you are a 21-year-old graduating college, it doesn't feel that way.
Right.
The youth unemployment right now is quite high. You are not seeing a lot of turnover in those jobs. It's just that if you've had the job for a while, you're not likely to be losing it right now. The other piece that you're seeing some of this negativity on this, one, you mentioned Social Security. So, part of that big surge that we saw over the last 12 months, by the way, was due to the Social Security Fairness Act, where a whole bunch of retirees that weren't previously eligible for Social Security overnight became eligible. So that adds to it. But it doesn't matter because it's still new money in the system that didn't exist prior to. So one downside, that money's going to run out soon. We're going to have to deal with it. Some politician
Couldn't help
somewhere
but think of that.
is going to have to be brave enough to stand up and say, yes, this program is going to go bankrupt and we're going to need to someday do something about it. So far, no real appetite to do that. So we'll just keep kicking that old can down the road. The other one that I think many would point to as a downside to all of this is that happens anytime there's wealth inequality that has built up. And the wealth inequality, I'm not describing this as like diversity or race or anything like that. It's just older people have more wealth. Mm-hmm. They've paid off their mortgages. They owned homes at a rate higher than most anybody else. And so the amount of wealth that has been built up in that older generation is massive. And so that has led to the average age of a home buyer being a record 56 years old.
That was stunning also.
That's unheard of. Toll Brothers mentioned that the portion of homes that they are selling, 24% of their customers are just paying cash.
Right.
Tough to compete, obviously, if you were that, now never mind the 21-year-old, let's call it the 28-year-old trying to buy their first home. Well, yeah, the homes are more and more being designed for the baby boomers, and that many of them are coming in with cash to buy those homes. And so there are some downsides to this, but honestly, the biggest downsides that I see aren't going to play out for a few years. Yes, there is going to be a surge in demand for healthcare. I don't really know how we are going to satisfy that with our current systems, but that's what innovation's all about, and I suspect that we will find systems to fix it. The other one is the stress on our Medicare and Social Security systems, which were poorly funded before the baby boomers. And this has exacerbated the issue substantially, and no politician out there even wants to talk about it.
No. And the housing market, I can't really see any positive catalysts to come on that side either. Nationally, I know
it seems like the type of thing that it just needs to reach a breaking point before people do something.
Right.
Like,
it has to be so profitable to make homes that maybe that would set out for more increased inventory.
Yeah,
it's hard.
I don't know. In my community where I live, we voted down any sort of denser housing building that's to be built because, I think logically because people are self-interested. They don't want more traffic. They don't want more dense housing. They want the same feel of the low traffic, quiet suburban town. And sorry, but that does not lead to cheaper housing. In fact, it leads to much more expensive housing. Hence why I could not afford to buy my home today.
Right.
Just couldn't. Couldn't afford to do it with the mortgage rates and the prices that they have gone to these days. And I didn't buy it 2 decades ago, by the way. Just like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Pretty recently. Definitely can't afford it now.